Hi, welcome to the bathtub, where when you hear this theme song, and we stop it really quick because we don't want to hear from Jay Ward's estate, you know it's another episode of the highly regarded bathtub theme show, Pointless Adventures in Literature. These are just simply rambling anecdotes from my life and my pointless and meaningless life in literature, and we promise you that every episode is the anecdote is either pointless or meaningless or both. And you can always bank on that here at the bathtub. We back that up with a warranty. If you find any point in this talk or anything meaningful in this talk, then you get your money back. Every nickel you paid for this show, you get it back. And this one is called Marvelously Wasteful. Actually, I was thinking of starting a brand new theme show called Marvelously Wasteful, which is just really stupid stuff we enjoy reading. And so then I kind of said, well, I don't really want to find a new theme song for it. And it's really hot today, and I didn't want to talk very long because I can't have the fan on because it makes so much noise, and it just becomes a big pain in here. So we're going to do a really fast one, and it's basically about the Legion of Superheroes. This was like my first favorite comic when I was like 5 years old, and I thought I'd talk a little bit about that. One of the things we don't try to do here at the bathtub is we usually don't try to tell people they have to read certain things or they're stupid, or if they like Tolstoy rather than Dostoevsky or vice versa, they're stupid. We basically just want everyone to read stuff they like, and that means we even enjoying stuff that we find kind of embarrassing. And I guess if I was to think of one thing I've been reading in the past 6 months, which I'm actually not going to broadcast this, but I've been actually rereading these big, huge omnibus volumes from DC Comics called The Legion of Superheroes. These are the first ones that came out. That picture's awful. That's like from some cartoon show. That's not all what the superheroes look like. But The Legion of Superheroes, let me see if I can find one. That's a perfectly normal. They were published at Adventure Comics. They showed up as a kind of guest superheroes in Superboy's stories in Adventure Comics. And then they showed up at a few other places, and then eventually they show up every month. But it took quite a few years before they became regulars, and I guess they became popular. We're sort of sweating here at the bathtub. This is my martini. A little too hot today. And when I was about 4 or 5 years old, the first comics I ever read, besides Superman, I did love Superman comics when I was a kid, was I found like a garage sale. The one where Lightning Lad's fighting a giant whale from outer space. It's in the first volume of this, and he loses his arm or something. And I read that comic. I must have read it 50 times. The idea that there's a whole bunch of superheroes all hanging out in some big clubhouse that looked like a toy rocket. There's not even any room in that stupid place for a bunch of superheroes, but there must be some time-space thing going on in it. And I was a kid. I loved these comics. I read them through till I was about 12 or 13. I must have been at least in high school. I probably, just before I started high school, I wised up and said, this is kind of embarrassing to be reading these. But I always wanted to go back and reread some of these and see if they're actually any good. They're kind of not. They're kind of stupid. But they're great comfort food. But I have to say, I enjoy just as much as reading most of the stuff I talked about on this show. And there's the first. This is the first one. Look at. This is Saturn Girl and Lightning Boy and Cosmic Boy. That's the very first picture of the Legion of Superheroes. They look like they're about 12 years old. And these have kind of okay introductions by, I don't know who this is, because this is a DC Comics, the new corporation that runs all these old titles, and forward by Mike Gold. I don't know who he is. These were written by a lot of first people. Jerry Siegel, who created Superman, wrote a lot of these. The Jerry Siegel ones are not very good. They're kind of annoying, actually. In fact, the only Jerry Siegel one that I liked was he actually does the Bizarros. I don't know if he created the Bizarros. Jerry Seinfeld always does it on his routines. The Bizarro Legionnaires. Here, I'll show you. This is volume 2. The Bizarro Legionnaires. And I was never that big into the Bizarros. I never thought they were that funny, but I was reading this and it did make me kind of laugh. I thought I'd show you that one part. So the Bizarros, they want to join the Legion or something, and they do everything wrong. Dodo? That's Dodo up there. It's the Mutual of Omaha of literature. They have the Bizarro dictionary, how it's spelled, and how they define words. The word hate, they define number after 7. Boxing match, putting match in box. Bizarros talk like real stupid people anyway, because they're not like us, not as smart as us. This is I want to say they were the Fatal 5. I haven't gotten to that part. There's one where Pharaoh Lad dies because he had to. I'm sorry, I told you the surprise ending. There's a 2-parter where they have to work with all these horrible gangsters, intergalactic space villains, to go save the universe or something, and that's the one-eyed guy. His brain is sticking out. I think they keep showing up. All these comics came out in like the 50s and in the 60s. 60s when I was like just a kid, and I really loved reading them. So I'm rereading them now. The only other thing I would probably say about them is that Edmund Hamilton, who was the great Gosh Wow space adventuring science fiction writer, wrote a lot of these, and he wrote a lot of the better ones. He writes one in here, which in the first volume I think it is, where someone starts killing off all the Legionnaires. It's pretty scary. It's actually quite scary even now that everyone it's like Then There Were None episode. And then it turns out, here's another spoiler, it's Mr. Mixtelpixelix. Do you guys remember this guy? He's like an imp from another dimension. And his name is Mr. Mixtelpixelix. And whenever he's doing horrible things in our dimension, Superman / Superboy has to trick him into saying his name backwards. It's a really idiotic subplot, but I don't know. That was a big surprise ending. Most of these comics, the early comics, have a lot to do with, because Superboy was super powered. He could do everything, and there's nothing he couldn't do. Superboy can fly across the galaxy and come back with a sandwich in like 10 seconds and stuff. And so he was so powerful that there's lots of the episodes based on kind of fooling Superboy, like there's always some bad guy who pretends to be a good guy and join the Legion, and he's trying to kill them all, or the Legion's trying to surprise Superboy at his birthday, so they come and pretend to be somebody they're not. There's a lot of stupid plots like that, but then there's a lot of kind of interesting kind of space adventure ones. I think the comics get better when I get into the second volume. But I thought I'd tell you that eventually when I'll do that. I'll do a follow-up if I ever keep reading these. I find them a little kind of slow to go through, but the idea of having all these kind of superheroes in the future, and they all have these different superpowers. I think Edmund Hamilton comes up with there's a group called the Legion of Substitute Heroes. That's another idea I used to like from those comics, because I always figured that if there was a superhero, if I was ever a superhero, I would be in the second. I knew I would be in the second team. I was always on the second team in sports. So I figured I'd have some crappy superpower. And these are people like one guy can change things colors. His whole power is he can change colors. Another guy, I don't know why his isn't, but he makes things really cold. There's a woman named Night Lass or Light Lady or something, and she only has superpowers at night, which seems pretty good. I don't see why they can't keep her around. But they're all in some adjunct replacement heroes. And every once in a while, they come along and help save the normal Legionnaires. That's the most interesting stuff I can say. The only other thing that kind of came across my mind when I was reading all these things is that, I was probably slow to the boat to catch on how annoying it was that everyone in these comics was white kids. They're all white, blonde, blue-eyed kids. And it was really, you couldn't really help seeing it. You're growing up as a kid, and you really don't even see anybody. Everyone is like pink-faced kids. There's a guy who's the chameleon boy. He's got an antenna coming out of his head. He's like orange. And there's Brainiac 5 who's green. He's like lime green. He's a super brain guy. And there's like not a single Hispanic superhero. There's not a single Afro-American superhero. I get it. It was pretty terrible culture that produced this stuff. It just didn't recognize we had all these people running around that didn't look like Saturn Lady or whatever. Anyway, that's those are my thoughts. They're not particularly interesting, but the only point of this whole thing is it's a great waste of time. I'm kind of having fun reading these. I kind of wish I'd bought the Comixology version because they're really heavy. It's very hard reading this. You can't really get yourself in any sort of position to actually read those. But I wouldn't recommend those to anybody. I'm going to read the whole damn series, and I can't say anyone should read them unless they remember them fondly as I do as a kid. They're very different from modern comics, completely different. Okay, bye.